Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're doing something I've seen people do around YouTube, which is I'm showing you my go-to slightly glam makeup look. So not the super extravagant colorful eyes or the super bright lips, but still quite a full face. This is what I would do when I have a special occasion with lots of people that usually don't wear a lot of eyeshadow. But I still like to, you know, be true to my style in that sense. And I also like neutral makeup, so this is just one version of how I would like to do my makeup. I would call this my everyday glam. So before we get started, thank you so much for clicking on my video. My name is Cecile, I live in the Netherlands, and I upload 3 long videos a week, and I try to upload a short every day, so there's always something new to watch. So if that sounds interesting to you, then please consider subscribing. And now let's get into this full face. So I'm going to start with my eyes. I always like to use an eyeshadow primer. So I've recently been in love with this one from Makeup Revolution. This is the Prime and Lock eyeshadow base. It's almost see-through, but it has a slight tint. I don't really have oily skin, but I do have oily eyelids. So I definitely always need an eyeshadow primer. And also that really helps with creasing. Eyeshadow palette that I picked out for today is this one, my go-to, the Pat McGrath Divine Rose to Mothership 8. I have a couple of Motherships and all of them are perfectly acceptable for this kind of look. But there's something about this one, I just use it the most, so I felt like it was appropriate. And this is what it looks like. I'm sure most of you have seen it already. I love this coppery shade. I don't know why, I just love it. And I love the shimmer for my inner corner. This is just a really good palette. So what I'm first going to do is pretty obvious. Let me scooch in a little bit closer. I'm going to use this apricot shade. The brush is a little bit stained, but since it's pink, I think it's going to be all right. So I'm just using that slightly above my crease, but also in my crease as a transition crease color 2-in-1. So Pat McGrath's eyeshadows are always very pigmented and they're always pretty intense color-wise, but they blend out, so it's fine. I also like to put a little bit underneath my lower lash line with whatever transition shade I'm using. I will wipe clean my under eyes after I do my full eyes. So I'll need to blend that a little bit further once I've done all of my base makeup. But that's why I can be a little bit messy, so that's nice. So now I'm switching to a smaller brush, which is also stained purple in this case, but that's fine because we're going in with a burgundy shade, which is this one. You can see the dips that are in these mattes. I use them so much. So I'm showing you my pretty basic standard eyeshadow look. But honestly, even when I try to do something different with lots of colors and, I don't know, just something different, this is always how I start. Even if I end up covering the whole thing up. And I also put this on my lower lash line, but only on the outer half. And also I'm putting this in my crease, but I'm trying to keep it a little bit lower than the other shade. So when I feel like I've built it up enough, I'm taking the first brush, no additional product, and I'm just making sure that everything blends into each other. And that's when the fun part starts, even though I already think these colors are just so pretty. They're so flattering. I don't know if it's because I have green eyes, but I really like this color story. So my ultimate go-to would be to go in with the copper and this shade. So shall I just do that? Honestly, I really like the multichrome in here as well. It's just a very beautiful palette, but there's just something about this copper shade. And these shimmers in here, they're more smooth than her glitter formula. Only this shade over here has that intense glitter. So I just build that up with my finger. I try to blend it into the crease and slightly on top of that deeper shade, but not too much. Then I'm taking this small pencil brush and I'm going in with the glittery beigey shade. I really swirl in my brush and then I put this in my inner corner, which is a step I will need to repeat after my concealer is applied as well. And I like to, take this a little bit up there. And I actually also like to add this to the inner part of my lid. And then I always pick a fun pop for this little space over here. Sometimes I do the multichrome. In this case, I'm going to do the gold, which is this one. Just like to add that little pop over there. And that's it for the eyeshadow. This is basically my go-to everyday look if I have one. My everyday look can also just be a blue smoky eye. That's what I prefer when I don't necessarily have to do anything important. But this is the kind of makeup look that I like to do whenever I see a lot of different people. So I'm going to finish this up using a light pink eyeliner in my bottom lash line, a dark black eyeliner in my tight line, and I also smudge it between my top lashes. I use a waterproof black mascara, and then I add a pair of lashes, which I will show you in just a second. So let me do that off camera, and then I'll show you what the finished eye look is. So I'm back. These are the finished eyes. I think they turned out pretty good. So I decided to add these lashes. These are my current favorite. These are the Beetlejuice X Makeup Revolution lashes. This collection launched, I don't know, fall 2022. So I get them on sale now because they're still available on Boozy Shop. But I really like them because, if you can see, they have little spikes. They have little spikes combined with fluttery lashes. And they're just not too big, but they do add a little bit of drama. And I just feel like they are kind of cute. So I also really like the Wispies from Ardell. They're also a favorite, and I always come back to those as well. These are my current favorite, and these are the types of lashes I would wear whenever I do my go-to glam. I don't want something too big, but I do like lashes to add to this more glam makeup. So I already cleaned off my under eyes, so now let's get into some face makeup. My go-to foundation, my trustworthy foundation at the moment in the perfect shade, is this one from NARS. This is the NARS Light Reflecting Foundation in the shade Gobi. And I'm cheating a little bit because I'm going to try it with a primer that I haven't tried it yet with. But this is my favorite primer at the moment. This is the Yummy Skin Glow Serum from Danessa Myricks. And this so far has combined beautifully with all the foundations I tried it with. So I'm pretty sure it'll work with my NARS foundation as well. The NARS foundation can be a little bit dry on me, even though I have more normal skin. But I don't know, it's a little bit more of a dry formula, even though there is a slight glow. So I like to have a very hydrating, even oily base. This is not an oily base, but it does work. But this serum, it makes my skin look so healthy. So this is a nice base. Let me let that set for a little bit and then we'll go into foundation. So I like to apply my foundation with a brush. This is just a Douglas brush that I got as a gift at some point. I like to start on my cheeks, work my way outwards and upwards. So it looks like this may be a little bit light, but I have a lot of redness in my face. So if you compare it to my neck, this is actually a perfect shade. And whenever I do my go-to glam, I like to cover all of my face, but I like to keep it pretty minimal on the forehead, foundation-wise. I also don't add concealer there anymore. It doesn't look that pretty on me anymore. Don't know if it's age or just preference, but I like to keep my forehead a little bit more natural. And then I'll add bronzer and everything, but I don't like to add too much product. And overall, I'd say I don't build this foundation up too much. It just has a nice medium coverage all of its own. And I keep it that way. Now, concealer is a little bit tricky because I used up my go-to concealer and now I'm just trying out a couple of different ones. But one that I've been loving a lot and that I would consider if I would actually go somewhere right now is this one from Too Faced. This is the Born This Way Ethereal Light Concealer. I have it in the shade Vanilla Wafer, which is slightly brightening, but not too much. And I'd say this has a nice medium coverage, and it doesn't really crease, and it's slightly radiant. So it's the perfect all-around concealer. Another favorite is definitely also the Charlotte Tilbury new concealer, the Beautiful Skin. But I don't have it on me right now. That would definitely also be a go-to. So I like to add quite a bit of this. If you have a concealer that tends to crease on you, but that's a little bit more high coverage, you don't have to do this. But this concealer, when I let it sit a little bit, it really doesn't crease on me, and I can use the coverage. I like a little bit more coverage underneath my eyes. But that's something that's really personal for me, that this concealer I can do that with, but not all. And then I always like to skip forward to my brows and let this set minutes at a time. So what I always start with my brows is something of a brow gel. I like to use my Pink Honey whenever I want a really strong brow. I also like the Catrice little shaping wax, but I just finished that one up. So what I'm going to use right now is this one, the Brow Glue from NYX. This does have a slight tint, but I use it mainly for the hold. So I like to spike up my brows a little bit, mainly in the front. And then towards the end, I like to go more horizontally. And on its own, this doesn't have the best hold on me, but combined with something else, which I will show you later, this will work. So I'll need to let this dry for a second. So I'm going back to my concealer. Usually I'd like to have it sit a little bit longer, but that's fine. So I use this triangular, it's called the 4D brush. It's from Primark and it works really well. So I like to start on my chin and lip area. Carefully tap out the concealer on my nose because that's just an area that doesn't really want product to stick there. And then I just start blending out my under eyes. Final step is always that I use my finger to get really close to wherever my eyeshadow is. And there you have it. This is my base. At this point I like to wipe off my lips with a little wipe. And then if I don't plan on using any cream products on my cheeks, then I'll set with powder at this point, but I think I will actually use one cream product today, so I'll do that first. So what I usually do is I use at least one cream product, so either a bronzer or a blush, not usually a highlight. I'm not a big fan of liquid highlights. Today we're going to use a cream blush, and I want something to match this. So it should be a little bit more red or peachy, slightly pinky, but not too much. So my options are the blush from Made by Mitchell in the shade Can't Cope with Coral, which has more of a demi-matte finish, or this one from Catrice in the shade Worth It, which is a recent favorite, and it has more of a natural, slightly less matte finish. And I think for today we're going to go with this one. And I like to use a brush again. I just like to use brushes for everything. I just go in, it has a little mirror, and I like to distribute some on both my cheeks first, then add a little bit to my nose. And then I just keep tapping, tapping, tapping until everything is blended out. I also like to take this a little bit into my eyeshadow sometimes, if the colors match. So just something like this. I don't go overboard, or at least I try not to. Now for powder, it's a little bit difficult for me to answer because this was my go-to, just a good powder foundation in a shade that was a little bit brightening but not too brightening. But recently I've also been loving this powder, but I think I'll go for this one just because that would be my go-to. The powder foundation underneath my eyes just works really well for me. So this is the Benefit Hello Happy Velvet Powder Foundation in the shade number 1. I just use a little brush again. And I set underneath my eyes. I take it down the sides of my nose, a little bit on my lip and chin. And then with whatever is remaining, I like to do the smile area. I've been needing to do that recently. And sometimes I also take a little bit on my forehead, but not always. And now I have a nice velvety finish. I do really like a powder foundation in the center of my face. I don't really have my go-to bronzer here at the moment, because that would be the Chanel one, the one from last summer, which comes in a big compact. That's actually my go-to bronzer. But one that I also really love that I'm going to use right now is this one from Charlotte Tilbury. This is her bronzer from the Film Star Bronze and Glow Duo, just in this face palette. This palette is called the Pretty Blushed Beauty. And this is more of a matte powder, but it does really sink into the skin and become a little bit more of a natural finish. I like to really get this area here so that, and I also take a little bit down the sides of my face, just so I don't get this weird white spot over here. But I know some people like to accentuate this, but I like to flatten it a little bit. I take whatever is remaining on my chin, but I try to avoid having a too harsh orange line there. And then I do take a generous amount on my forehead. Then I first do the edge. I make sure that's very well blended into my hairline. And then I take a little bit on the rest of my forehead, just so I don't have that halo effect. And then if I feel like it's necessary, I'll add a little bit more just to the perimeters of everything. And then I also take a little bit underneath my nose, sides of my nose, and I connect it. Now let's quickly jump back into the brows, because I have this again. I know if you've seen my empties video, I finished up my 2 brow pens and I was looking to replace at least one of them. So I bought the micro-filling brow pen again from Benefit. I got this from my mom actually, because it's a little bit more expensive. And I used to have the shade Blonde, which was a little bit light. I had to combine it with another brow pen, but now I took the shade Light Brown, which I think will be a little bit better. So this is one of those 3-pronged pens. Yeah, this is great. This is a very good color for me. So I just go over my full brows with this. And it just goes really quickly, and I really love this product. So yeah, I feel like I only need 1 brow pen now. So I'm back to a 3-step brow routine. So step 1 is the clear brow gel, step 2 is the brow pen. And then, unless I'm using the Pink Honey, which has a very strong hold, I'll need something other to make sure that everything stays in place. And what I like to use is a tinted brow gel. So this is the Thick and Wow from Essence. And I just find that these different formulas together, they ensure a little bit more hold. I don't know how it works. It's like this product cements the other one. And otherwise my brows will just fall down again. And this also will give it a little bit more tint. I like it. I like a strong brow. So I usually do add a highlighter. I do still really like highlighters. Sometimes I also add something of a different blush on top. I don't feel like I need it right now, but sometimes I do that. So since I'm doing more of a warm, rosy sort of look, I like to use a pink highlighter. So I'm going into my Lethal Cosmetics face palette, and I like this shade as a highlighter. I think it's called Flux. And I just like it. I know it's a different shade of pink, but it works. So I like to add my highlight pretty high, actually underneath my eye, and then bring it slowly towards my cheek area. I also add a little bit on the bridge of my nose and the ball of my nose, Cupid's bow, and then a little bit on my forehead and my chin. I know, I go all overboard with highlight. And then usually I take a little bit more and just accentuate this little part over here. I just think that's flattering for me. I know a lot of people do their highlights right here, but I put my blush there, so I have to put my highlight even higher. Whenever I do add a little bit of blush, it's often this one from NARS. This is the Orgasm on the Beach face palette. And I especially love this apricot shade, but I also really love this one. So let's just add a little bit. I use the same brush and we're going to add the shade Orgasm. These are baked gelée products. And I sometimes use this to mesh together the blush and the highlight. I probably would usually skip this step whenever I'm doing a presentation or meeting new people or something like that. I would tame down the cheeks a little bit, but if I'm meeting family, I would do something like this. So now a crucial step that I often forget is that I need to go back into my palette, take the little pencil brush again with my inner corner shade and re-intensify it. And then I'll also need to do the same. I don't really add any new product to the brush, but I'm just going over the outer edge as well. And this step I often forget, but I feel like it's very important. So now all we need is lips, and I can go 2 routes in this case. I could go a little bit more pinky, but in this case I think I will go more nude. So I like to take this lip liner. This is from Hema. This is a Dutch drugstore warehouse kind of thing. This is in the shade 24, but it's just a neutral light nude. And I overline my lips a little bit at the bottom. And I also overline my Cupid's bow a little bit. Then I take a really pale lipstick. Sometimes. Sometimes I also take just a regular nude, like this one from Chanel. This is in the shade Adrienne, which is really pretty, which is my more safe option. But sometimes I like to go ultra glam, and I take this one from Glamlight, which is in collaboration with Michaela, which is this really pale nude. And I like to use that as well. And I always go back with my finger and mesh the lip lines. Then to finish it up, I pretty much never leave it like this. I always add something like a gloss, even on top of a more satin lipstick like this one. And the one that I would add in this scenario is this one from Essence in the shade Gold Dust. This is a really pretty nude lip gloss, which will take away a little bit of the intensity of the super light lipstick. And there you have it. This would be my go-to glam. If I don't want this much of a nude lip, I would probably either take the Chanel, or I would just do a lip liner with this lip oil from NYX. Either the brown one, which would be really pretty with this look, or the pink one. So that's my go-to glam makeup look. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.